Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Mindfuel, where we are helping endurance athletes train their brain as consciously as they train their bodies. Today, we're diving into self-perception and specifically feeling like you belong in sport. So, a very interesting topic that we haven't covered yet. And I'm really excited to welcome Shannon Wilson today to have this conversation. Shannon, welcome to Mindfuel.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So glad to have you. As I think you already know, Shannon, we like to start every episode by asking our guests to introduce themselves, not by saying what you do, but explaining who you are. So, how would your husband or your kids describe you, Shannon?
Well, I do Peloton and my leaderboard name is Holy Hot Mess. And I think that would be how most of my family would describe me. Just a little go-getter that half the time doesn't know which direction she's going. But
I love that.
he would describe me as a kind, loving mom. We have 5 children and we have 3 grandsons. So 3 little boys in our life. And he would say I'm motivated, hardworking, and probably would say I give everyone else a lot of grace and don't give myself the same in return.
Well,
And a
other
little
than the holy
crazy.
hot mess, I think a lot of those other traits are ones we hear fairly often on Mindful, and I think a
Yeah.
lot of people relate to. But as
Yeah.
we'll get on to a little bit later in our conversation, in addition to all the family you just described, you have a lot going on in your life. So I can
Yes.
imagine why
Yeah.
you're a bit like
Yeah.
here, there, and everywhere because you're
Yeah.
so ambitious. You try to
Yes.
do a lot, which is really
Yeah.
admirable. So, on that note, maybe we'll start diving in a little bit more into the sports side of your life. Can you tell us more about your relationship to endurance athletics?
Yeah, so I've been well, actually, I started out as a gymnast when I was young and then, yeah, did competitive gymnastics till I think I was around 15 years old. Once I got into high school, I really started to get involved with track and field. And that was my big passion, the 100 meter, 200 meter, 4x1. I loved the track. And then as I got older, I started setting different goals, like trying to do my first 5K, 10K, and it just kind of blossomed from there, like it does many, and started doing half marathon, marathon, and then eventually got into Ironman distance training and competing. And I've done 9 full Ironmans now and 26 marathons. So lots of use of my legs for the last few years. Yeah. Yeah.
Very inspirational. And that was one of the things that stood out to me when you actually found Mind Fuel on the day that we launched. And I have to tell you, Shannon, that your note that you submitted via our website was probably the highlight of the whole launch day. There were a lot of
Um,
interesting messages and interactions, but to hear from someone who I didn't know personally or
yeah.
wasn't kind of connected to directly, and to hear that you felt that Mind Fuel was something that could help you and was really needed in the community was so powerful. And just to reiterate a few of the things that you said to us, just to get the audience really clear on how incredible what you do is. You mentioned that you're 52, as you just said, 26
54.
marathon, 54, sorry.
54.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
26 marathons, 9 Ironmans. You're going for that Kona legacy spot, which means you need 3 more Ironmans so you can get to
Yes.
Kona, which I'm reading that. I'm like, wow, I can't believe this woman needs Mind Fuel. But you mentioned that you really struggle with self-perception and even said in your note, big time, and that you were
Yeah.
thankful for this additional support and also that you were hopeful to inspire more women in your age bracket to keep chasing goals and dreams. So this is what we're diving into today. And it's just so amazing that you are willing to be vulnerable with a complete stranger, but B, that part of your goal in doing these incredible feats is to help inspire others. So thank you for that, because I think that's something
Yeah.
that makes the endurance community really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I guess diving into that self-perception piece, which you say that you struggle with big time, you could just tell us a little bit more why you say that and what some of those kind of mental hurdles are.
I think for me, a lot of it is I'm kind of always mentally, if I'm climbing a mountain, I'm already looking at the next mountain. I'm not even standing on the one I am currently at and looking out at what I just accomplished. I'm always kind of living 6 months ahead of my life, is what it feels like generally, a lot of times. And I think it's because I have a hard time acknowledging what I've accomplished. And it's maybe that you just never feel like you're quite enough. You've got to get to that next goal instead of celebrating where you've been. and that journey that took you to that particular finish line. And I don't know where that comes from. Is it you never feel quite enough? You always feel like you need to do just one more thing to get approval. And the approval at the end of the day is your own. Most people are, they sit back and go, "Oh my God, you've done 9 Ironmans." And to me, it's like, yeah, but I haven't got to Kona. And it's, like, I guess I just need to stop and reflect kind of on what I have accomplished and try and enjoy the whole process, because one day I will get to Kona. I don't know when it will be, but I will get
You
there.
will.
I'm a determined, motivated person. And, I hope I'm going to be able to celebrate that journey when I get there, instead of thinking, okay, now what? Right? And that's kind of how I've lived my entire
Mm.
life, is always having to do that next thing and not being more present. And I guess that's, it does come back to self-perception a little bit, and self-esteem and all
It
of that.
does. So
Yeah.
much of that resonates, and it's such a tricky balance because a lot of that drive is also what makes it possible to do these things that you want to do. And so a bit of that,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm not quite there yet," is probably helpful to push and motivate and say, "Okay, so I'm going to go for that extra training round. I'm going to do this session that I really feel like I don't want to do today."
Yeah.
But then, yeah, we do have to stop and celebrate and know that we are fine and we are enough no matter how much of this we do or don't
Yeah.
do. It's
Yeah.
really hard.
It is. And living that way constantly eventually does play a bit of havoc on your mental health, because you're pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing, and you're not letting your body rest and relax and enjoy. And at some point, you lose the enjoyment of the goal, and you lose, the enjoyment of the hobby. I am not a professional. I am not getting paid to do this. This is a hobby.
Yeah.
And so somewhere along the way, sometimes you lose that enjoyment. And then it's like, what are we doing this for exactly? And, you really have to stop and think, what the end goal is and what you're trying to achieve, and make sure you're doing it in a healthy way, mentally as much as physically. So your
Yes.
body needs rest, your mind needs rest as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to dig into a couple of things there. So, one is just for context, you talked about your family, but you also have a full time job and I think some other things going on. Would you share like a little bit more about what your life looks like, just so that everyone knows how that you are fitting an Ironman on top of all of that?
Yeah. So I'm a palliative care consult nurse at the hospital. So I work, at the hospital Monday to Friday, 8 to 4. So those hours actually do work well for training in some aspect. You just maybe not get as much sleep as you always need. We have 5 children. We have 3 grandsons. So 2 are in Ottawa, so an hour away. And our newest one is in Philadelphia. So about a 7.5 hour drive for us, that we try to see frequently. And have my parents are still with me, thank God. My dad's well into his 80s, and he's had some significant health issues this year. So my very independent parents have just needed a little bit more help lately. So that's shifted as well. So there's lots going on.
A lot that's very emotionally draining. So it's not just
Yeah.
about time and maybe losing a bit of sleep. I imagine it's just a whole shift in where your energy goes and how it's being used. You mentioned too about recognizing when it might be better to step back from training. So have you made that decision in the past when you've kind of grappled with it and needed to make a
Yeah.
call?
There's seasons in life and there's ebbs and flows in training. And I'm kind of, I've been trying to push through, and I canceled one race earlier in the spring because my parents just had significant needs. I needed to be around. And, you're looking at 15 hours a week pretty much of training to properly prepare for an Ironman. And then you add that to a 40-hour work week. It's hard. And you have to be in the mental right headspace to tackle that. And I've done 9 of them. I've been able to do them. And I've managed with a lot of family support. My husband is amazing. at helping me finagle all these things when I go out and do a race. But sometimes if you're not in the right headspace, it just becomes too much to even, comprehend. And we have a really busy summer coming up ahead. And I had pushed off my spring Ironman to September, thinking, okay, we'll kind of get things organized with my parents and we'll kind of get our heads going in the right space and I can start a build for September. And I got through the first 4 weeks of my training and I'm like, I am not in the right space to
Oh,
pull off an Ironman this year. And it was such a hard decision. I kind of kept just going through the motions for the last month and making sure I was getting the workouts done, but I was ending up in tears. At the end of the day, I was trying to figure out how we were going to go see our grandson and where I would find a pool in Philadelphia and how would I get my 5-hour bike ride in. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy. And it's time, to just kind of shift gears and have the rest of the year just moving for fun and not for a specific
awesome.
goal, knowing that there's women in their 80s doing Ironman. So there is no gun to my head to get this
No.
done in 2 years, which has kind of been like, I was always worried, I'm going to run out of time. I'm going to run out of time. But I feel as healthy today as I did when I was 30. I really do. Like Ironman's hard and I don't care what age you are. And actually I've had Ironmans in my 50s that were easier than when I was, 39. So if you do the work, I'm going to be able to still do them. And
Yes.
it's recognizing that again, it's just not the right time right now. And when something's causing you anxiety or lack of sleep because you're trying to figure out how you're going to fit it all in, it's like, this is crazy. You need
Yeah.
to just stop. And, it took me actually getting sick and really, really run down. And, my sleeping was outrageous. And then I just crashed for a few days. And, I'm like, okay, we need to take
The
a step
body is
with
telling
a
you
lot of
something, and I was
support.
just getting ready to say that. I think
Yeah.
continuing to push through tends
Yeah.
to resolve itself in injury, illness. You end up not absorbing the training, and so I think you
No.
made a very courageous and what sounds like absolutely the right decision for you. And
Yeah.
I love the contrast of your confidence in, "Well, I'll be fine in a few years to do this again," versus
Yeah.
the beginning where you're like a little bit,
Yeah.
I always need to have a goal. I'm not sure who am I without this. So it's so
Yeah.
interesting that in the space of whatever 10, 15 minutes that you're able to access both sides of your brain. And I think that's really like quite
Yeah.
powerful. You've got it in you. And that's part of what we talk about here at Mindfuel is like we have to be conscious of what's going on and harness kind of the
Yeah.
right thing at the right time so that it
Yeah.
serves us the best.
Yeah, and I think you really have to pay attention, to your nervous system
Yes.
because you can tolerate things, tolerate things, and then you push, 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 and then all of a sudden you've just gone over that limit and you
Yeah.
either get sick or you end up in a really bad space. And so, and I don't know if it's age, if things get harder to kind of manage as you get older, but I think I just have been on this race and it's just gotten the best of me for the moment. But I still have goals. I still, like I
Of
was saying,
course.
I still want to run and do things. But if don't want to go to the pool at 5 in the morning and I would rather go kayaking with my husband on the river. That's the kind of decisions I want to make for the next year. And
Yeah.
I feel really good about that. It was a really hard decision. I drove my family nuts the last, month. Am I going to do this? What do I do? Do I just push through? And they're all just, they've been very patient with me and they know I'm driven. They know I'm motivated, but they know I'm a little bit burnt out right now. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Well,
I
it's
just have
so
to
nice
give,
that
everyone else gives me this grace and they're like, Mom,
exactly.
you have nothing to prove. And then I'm just, finish what you started. It's the
It's
battle.
nice you have the balance and that they're not also pushing you or you feel, like,
No,
guilty
not
or
at all. No,
anything.
they're like, yes, Mom doesn't have to bike this year. They're like, we're going to not have to worry about her training.
Yeah.
I think they need a mental break as well from it.
It's
We
true.
do. It's
We
hard,
forget the toll that our
It
goals can take on
does. It
others.
takes a toll on everybody, right? The schedule, especially my husband. He's like having to, when I'm right in the heart of training I'm pretty much useless for anything else that's going on, but yeah.
That's so nice that you have that system around you.
Yeah.
True love.
Yeah.
When you look back, so you've been an athlete for so much of your life.
Yeah.
How do you think kind of your life and particularly your mental health and maybe your self-perception would have been different without running and triathlon?
Gosh, I don't know. Like, I think, I'm definitely proud of what I've accomplished. And I do have anxiety. I'm a high functioning anxious person. So I seem, for the most part, to be able to keep a good handle on it. But movement really does help me manage any kind of worry that I feel or stress. And it's very beneficial for me. What I've noticed is if I'm really stressed or feeling really overwhelmed, then I need to be a little kinder as far as what kind of movement I'm doing.
Mm,
So instead of like a 3 hour bike ride or pushing through a hard interval session, maybe I go for a walk with my dog, or maybe I just do some yoga. And so it's really important for me to listen to my body and kind of see where I am, because if you are stressed already and then you do a stressful workout, you come out of that workout feeling even more stressed and more depleted as opposed to rejuvenated, right?
totally.
Like, as opposed to on a day I've had a really emotional day at work, which can happen, I go down and do yoga. And, sometimes I cry on that yoga mat if it's been a difficult day, but I just feel that release, and you have a much better sleep that night as opposed to going down and pushing myself through a 1 hour interval run session on the treadmill, right? So listening to your body is really important. But for me, movement has always been about self-care, good self-care for me. Everyone always says, "What are you going to do if you can't run?" And I'm like, "Well, I'll walk, I'll crawl." Like, movement will always be a part of my life. I'm really a strong advocate for movement for healthy aging and longevity,
Me
so,
too.
and for good health span, right? Not just living
Yes.
long, but living healthy and
Yeah,
long.
that's
Yeah.
what it should be about. We might not know the end date, but we should maximize the
Yeah,
life
yeah,
that we're number of
yeah.
years
So
we
I
have.
think everybody needs movement in their life in some capacity. It doesn't necessarily have to be a goal. For me, I'd like something on the calendar always. I always like something to be training for, even if it's, a 5K, half marathon. It doesn't have to be a big monumental thing, but
Mm.
I always do like something on the calendar. I get a bit squirrely.
Yeah, I get that, and it's that kind of nice to have a little bit of purpose in the training, I think, and
Yeah,
some days
yeah,
for me, that purpose can truly be, "Oh, I'm a bit anxious." Running for me
yeah,
can be very meditative, so I wanna reflect on
yeah,
that or brainstorm this,
yeah,
but yeah, otherwise, sometimes it's nice to think about, "Oh, this run is helping me get closer," whatever sport you choose,
exactly.
to this
Yeah.
goal that I have. Yeah.
And a lot of days I run with music, and then other days my brain does not need any other distraction. I just need
Totally.
my feet hitting the pavement and not hearing music and
Yeah,
things.
someone who hasn't been accustomed to doing so much movement or particularly maybe tackling a race and maybe doesn't feel that they belong in the endurance athlete category or world, but is curious about it or maybe wants to get started. What would you recommend, maybe particularly for athletes who are kind of like 40 plus or a bit, they perceive themselves as a little bit older or it's too late to start?
My number one thing is move your mind and body, not for weight loss. Because I feel like so many people, when they start any kind of exercise program, their goal is weight loss. And then exercise becomes a punishment. And I really feel like movement should be for all of you. And find something you enjoy. Pickleball, walking your dog, kayaking, any kind of movement. It becomes addictive in a good way because you feel so good after you move. And anybody can do whatever they want. There's no restriction. I'm doing a 5K tonight with one of my colleagues. It's her very first 5K. I'm so excited for her. She's almost 30. She's never run in her whole life. And in the winter, she told me that she really wanted to do a 5K. Would I help her? So I kind of worked with her. We started with walking, then we started run walking, and I've, helped coach her along a little bit. And we're going to do the 5K tonight. It's her first one. She gets so excited because she said, "I never thought in a million years I'd be able to run 5K." And I'm so proud of her. And, that's one of the things when you're an endurance athlete, especially when you're doing marathon Ironman, you forget how
Yes.
far a 5K it really is. And
Yeah.
it's such an achievement, right? And like, this is her marathon today. So, anybody can do anything. Yeah.
I
So,
love that. What a
yeah,
beautiful way to use it's a completely different kind of goal, is to take your
yeah,
knowledge and your passion and support
yeah,
someone to do
yeah.
something that they didn't think was possible. That's
Yeah,
really
I
cool.
I love that, and I love that people will come up to me and say, "I started biking, and do you have any recommendations on how I build up my distance?" And I love that people get motivated by seeing others do these things, right? So that is really nice. Yeah.
Beautiful. In a similar vein, one of the things you also mentioned in your note to Mindfuel was that you'd like to see more women, participants in general, but I think especially women in your age category, so 50 plus, tackling things. So we've just talked about kind of the 5K, but if we really think about races, what are some things you think Ironman or some of these other large race organizations or governing bodies could do to help make sure that endurance sports are seen as more inclusive and that anyone at any age with the right training and health metrics and all of that can
Yeah.
tackle them safely and have fun?
Yeah, I do see that Ironman, I've been getting some of their emails, and they are really focusing on making sure people are well prepared for these races. A lot of times people are kind of one and done bucket list Ironman race, and they may have never even done a sprint triathlon, and they're jumping right into Ironman. So I'm really happy that they're starting to take a focus on sending those emails out to people on making sure you're prepared, making sure you're trying these different things, maybe not starting at a full Ironman. My very first one was a try. And that's where I began. And I think there's a lot of merit to starting at the beginning. You wouldn't go just do a marathon. So without doing a 5K, 10K type prep
Right.
first, right? So I think people need to take the same responsibility as far as that. I also think Ironman could do a much better job in their flexibility of either refunds or a more kinder deferral, because these races are $1,200 Canadian, so 1,000-ish US, and the refund policy is very poor. The deferral is really stringent as far as like what races you can switch to, when you can push it off. And things happen in people's lives. And, women get pregnant. Women suddenly are looking after aging parents and are not able to attend a race. And so people are getting nervous to invest in these races when, your life isn't a guarantee. And I know with marathons, you can always buy insurance, and that makes it a little easier when you kind of have that reassurance that if something happens with my mom and I need to be off, I don't have to worry that I'm out $1,200. So, I think there needs to be more flexibility.
And you are such an inspiration. Thank you very much for doing this with us. If you could
Yeah.
leave us with one succinct thought on self-perception today, what would it be?
Recognize what you have accomplished and celebrate it and live in the present.
Love
Don't
it.
worry about what's coming next. Celebrate what you've just accomplished and enjoy the moment.
If people want to continue the conversation with you or connect with you, Shannon, how can they?
I'm on Instagram, I'm on Strava, I'm on Facebook. If anyone ever has questions or wants to chat about anything, I'm always happy to help. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We will,
Thank
of
you.
course, put your details on our
Yeah.
website in the expert section. And if people want to start a conversation right here on this episode, absolutely feel free and we'll get back to you or connect
Yeah.
you directly
Yeah.
with Shannon. Her details will be in the show notes. And of
Yeah.
course, if you don't want to be public about it, you can also email connect@mindfuel.fit and we'll be
Yeah.
happy to chat to you.
Yeah.
Thank you
I
so
just
much
wanna
to everyone
say
for
one
listening
thing
today. Thank you.
before Can I say
Yes,
one thing?
please.
I think what your podcast and your platform is doing is so important because, a healthy, productive athlete has to look at every aspect, not just the training physically, but mentally, and I think, this is the first time I've really seen this start to take off, and I think it's gonna give a lot of value and a lot of help to people that are type A struggling, trying to achieve all these goals, and then sometimes don't always do the proper self-care. So I think it's really important what you're doing, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Yeah.
support because we can't do it without great
Yeah.
wisdom
Yeah.
from our experts like you. Thank you,
Uh,
Shannon. Thanks to all of you for joining and happy and healthy training. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.